Margaret had always been a morning person. Even in her 70s, she rose with the sun, made her tea, and looked out the window at the robins in her backyard. But over the past few years, something had changed. Mornings no longer began with the same comfort. Instead of calmness, she was met with a dull pressure in her abdomen, a stubborn fullness that lingered for days. Constipation had quietly crept into her life, stealing the joy from her routine. She wasn't alone. Across the country, thousands of older adults like Margaret faced the same issue. The natural rhythm of digestion had slowed, replaced by discomfort, frustration, and the constant search for relief. Pills helped for a time, but the effects were unpredictable. Fiber supplements promised regularity, but often caused bloating, and harsh laxatives left her body feeling drained. Then, one day, during a phone call with her niece who worked in healthcare, Margaret heard about a simple 5-minute morning routine designed specifically for people over 68. It didn't involve medications, didn't require any equipment, and was completely natural. Her niece spoke gently but confidently, explaining that this method was based on respected medical research and had already helped countless seniors restore regularity and comfort. At first, Margaret was skeptical. How could 5 minutes change what had become a long-standing problem? But something in her niece's voice gave her hope. She agreed to give it a try, starting the very next morning. What she discovered was not a miracle cure, but a quiet return to balance. Within days, her body began responding, not with sudden urgency, but with gentle signals that everything was working as it should. This 5-minute method isn't about complexity. It's about restoring a lost connection with the body. With age, our systems slow down, not because we're doing something wrong, but because the body changes. The key is learning to support it, kindly and consistently. And that's exactly what this routine does. It begins with the simplest of actions, ones that anyone can do from the comfort of their bed. There are no pills to swallow, no strict diets to follow, and no exercises that strain the joints. Just a thoughtful set of steps, practiced each morning, designed to awaken the digestive system and set the tone for the day. In the pages ahead, you'll walk through each of these steps with Margaret, starting with the one that seems almost too simple to matter: water. But as you'll soon see, even the most ordinary things can become powerful when done with intention and care. The next morning, Margaret woke just after 6 a.m., the same time as always. But today, she remembered her niece's advice. Before she reached for her robe, before she even swung her legs over the side of the bed, she reached for the glass of water she had placed on her nightstand the night before. Room temperature, just as instructed. It looked so simple, clear, still, ordinary. But today, that water held promise. Margaret had always heard that drinking water was good for digestion, but she had never given much thought to when or how she drank it. She usually waited until after breakfast or sipped throughout the day. But now, she brought the glass to her lips and began to drink slowly, carefully, not in a rush, but with intention. Her niece had explained why this mattered. During sleep, the digestive system powers down, like the rest of the body. When we wake, everything inside us is still quiet, still waiting for a signal to begin. That first drink of water sends the IE message. Wake up, it's time to work. Margaret took a few more sips, letting the coolness settle into her. Not too cold to shock, not too warm to discomfort. Just right. Over the course of 3 minutes, she emptied the glass. About 16 ounces, as recommended. She stayed sitting on the edge of the bed, letting her body remain still, giving her system a moment to respond without distraction. It felt gentle, almost ceremonial. Her niece had mentioned that this morning water ritual was supported by studies from institutions like the Mayo Clinic. Researchers had found that drinking water immediately upon waking stimulated something called the gastrocolic reflex, a natural signal from the stomach to the colon to start moving things along. In younger bodies, this reflex fires easily, but in older adults, it tends to weaken. That's why timing, quantity, and temperature matter so much. As she sat quietly, Margaret noticed something unexpected. Not a dramatic change, but a subtle sense of movement. A lightness, as if her body had acknowledged the signal. There was no urgency, only a soft stirring, a sense of readiness. It was the first time in years she had felt such a direct response from her body without aid or strain. She stood up carefully, grateful and curious about what the next steps would bring. This wasn't magic. It was awareness. It was care. One glass of water, taken in the quiet of morning, had shifted something fundamental. And Margaret, for the first time in a long while, felt hopeful that her mornings could be different. Margaret had always considered herself modestly in tune with her body. But it wasn't until she tried the second step of her new morning ritual that she realized just how long she had ignored its quiet calls for help. After finishing her glass of water and taking a few minutes to let her body respond, she lay back down on her bed, knees bent, feet flat, as her niece had described. Now came the part that felt both strange and strangely comforting. The abdominal massage. She placed her right hand gently on the lower right side of her belly, just above the hip bone. At first, her touch was tentative, unsure, but slowly she began to trace small circular motions, moving her hand upward along her side, across her upper abdomen beneath the ribs, and down the left side, following the exact path of the large intestine. This wasn't about rubbing to relieve pain. It was about guiding, encouraging, listening. Margaret repeated the motion 10 times, pausing gently when she felt a bit of tightness or resistance. In those spots, she lingered a few seconds longer, applying just enough pressure to be firm, but not uncomfortable. There was something deeply personal about this moment. Her hand, her breath, her awareness, all centered on an area of her body that had long been the source of frustration and discomfort. Now, it was a place of attention, of care. Her niece had explained that this massage technique was backed by research from Harvard. In older adults, digestive muscles lose some of their strength, and the nerve signals that regulate bowel movements can become less responsive. This specific massage stimulated both the physical movement of waste and the neurological pathways, that control elimination. It was a way of reawakening a system that had fallen asleep. What Margaret didn't expect was how connected the practice made her feel. This was no longer a problem to fix, but a part of her to nurture. With each slow pass of her hand, she breathed more deeply. Her body, once tense with years of digestive uncertainty, began to soften. It was as though the gentle circles were drawing away the worry as much as the waste. When she finished, she sat up slowly and smiled. This wasn't a cure-all, but it was a beginning. A conversation between her and her body that she had forgotten how to have. In just 2 minutes, she had created space for movement, for calm, for change. The journey was unfolding, step by simple step. Later that morning, Margaret found herself standing in the bathroom, reflecting on something she had never questioned before: how she sat on the toilet. For over 70 years, she had used the same posture, the same habit passed down without thought or instruction. Back straight, feet flat on the floor, knees at a right angle. It had always seemed the natural way. But her niece had gently suggested otherwise. "It's not you, Aunt Margaret," she had said with a chuckle. "It's the toilet design." Today, Margaret had come prepared. A small wooden footstool, the kind she used in the kitchen, now stood in front of her toilet. As she sat down and rested her feet on it, her knees rose several inches above her hips. She tilted her torso slightly forward, hands resting gently on her thighs. It felt odd at first, almost childlike. But then she noticed something. A surprising ease, a soft alignment within her core, like her body had just sighed in relief. Her niece had explained that in this elevated position, the puborectalis muscle, the sling that wraps around the rectum, relaxes, allowing the colon to straighten. On a standard toilet, that muscle remains partially contracted, creating a kink that blocks the natural flow. For seniors especially, whose abdominal muscles have weakened with age, that extra resistance means more straining, more holding, more frustration. But with the knees raised, that kink is released. Gravity steps in to assist. The body, freed from unnatural tension, can do what it was designed to do. Margaret sat quietly, feeling no urgency but appreciating the difference. She realized that she had spent years unknowingly fighting her own anatomy, mistaking effort for necessity. This new position wasn't a trick. It was a return to something older than plumbing, something human, instinctive. She thought of her friend Alice, who had struggled with hemorrhoids for years, and of George from church, who once confided about his fear of heart strain during bowel movements. This simple adjustment could help them both, she thought. It didn't require medication or surgery, just awareness and a footstool. When she stood up, Margaret felt lighter, not just physically, but emotionally. There was power in knowing that small changes could bring such gentle relief. She looked at the stool, smiled, and left it right where it was. From now on, this wasn't just a bathroom accessory. It was part of a better way of living, one that respected her body's wisdom and honored its quiet needs. The following morning, Margaret added a new step to her gentle ritual: breathing. Not just any breathing, but the kind her niece had called therapeutic. At first, Margaret was unsure. Breathing seemed so automatic, so simple. How could it possibly influence her digestion? But trusting the process, she settled into her favorite armchair, feet flat on the floor, back comfortably supported. She rested one hand on her chest and the other on her belly, as instructed. She began by inhaling through her nose, slowly counting to 4. She noticed how her lower hand, on her belly, rose gently, while her upper hand stayed mostly still. That was the goal. Then she paused, holding the breath softly for 2 counts, before exhaling slowly through her mouth for 6 counts, gently pulling her belly inward. 1 cycle complete. She repeated the process, steady and calm, 5 times. As anti-durhures. The minutes passed, Margaret noticed a surprising shift. Her thoughts slowed. Her shoulders relaxed. The tension she hadn't even realized she was carrying began to melt away. It wasn't just about air in and out. It was about giving her body space to rest, reset, and heal. Her niece had explained that this style of breathing activated the parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for rest, digestion, and elimination. The vagus nerve, running from the brain to the gut, was like a bridge. With every slow breath, she was gently walking across it. Margaret had spent much of her life rushing through mornings, meals eaten quickly, chores tackled immediately, mind already on the day ahead. But now, in the stillness of breath, she found something else: presence. Her body was listening, responding. The subtle movements in her belly, the calm settling into her chest. It was all part of a larger harmony returning. She thought about the stress she had carried over the years, especially during retirement when structure faded and health became a daily consideration. It made sense now. When the body feels rushed or anxious, digestion suffers. Muscles tighten, signals dull. But when calm is restored, the body remembers what to do. By the time she finished her 5th breath cycle, Margaret felt not only relaxed, but energized in a quiet, steady way. No longer at odds with her body, she felt aligned. This wasn't just breathing, it was a conversation between her mind and her gut, a reminder that health begins with stillness, with listening. She smiled, softly, her hands resting quietly. This, too, would become part of her morning, a sacred pause in a world that rarely stops. With her body now relaxed from breathing, Margaret stood near the window, sunlight pouring in like a gentle blessing. It was time for the final part of her morning ritual: movement. Not exercise in the traditional sense, with sweat and strain, but intentional, mindful motions designed to wake up the digestive system. Her niece had explained that movement didn't need to be intense to be effective. In fact, the right type of movement, done slowly and purposefully, could do more to support digestion than an hour at the gym. She began lying on her back, knees bent, arms by her sides. Slowly, she brought her right knee toward her chest, using both hands to hug it gently. She held it there for 10 seconds, feeling the slight pressure in her lower abdomen, then released and repeated the same with her left leg. Alternating legs, she completed 10 slow repetitions. The motion was simple, but she could feel her core awakening, her intestines responding to the gentle compression and release. Next, she sat upright in her armchair. With her feet flat and spine tall, she placed her right hand on her left knee and slowly twisted her torso to the left, gazing softly over her shoulder. She held the twist for 15 seconds, then returned to center and repeated the movement on the opposite side. She performed 5 twists each way, feeling her spine stretch and her abdominal area gently wring itself like a towel being rinsed. It wasn't dramatic, but it was deeply satisfying. Finally, she stood near the kitchen counter, steadying herself with one hand. She began marching slowly in place, raising her knees with control, one at a time. The rhythm was soft and steady. 30 seconds of calm, purposeful movement. It felt surprisingly invigorating. Her hips warmed, her posture lifted, her breath deepened. She could feel circulation stirring, blood moving freely toward her core. These 3 movements, while brief, felt complete. They weren't meant to exhaust or challenge. They were invitations, asking her body to participate, to move, to remember. In her youth, Margaret had taken movement for granted. Now, each motion felt like an act of respect. As she finished, she paused, hands on her hips, eyes closed. There was no ache, no heaviness, no resistance, just a sense of readiness. Her digestive system, long, sluggish, and silent, now felt alive. Not forced, but invited. This final step had sealed the morning ritual, making it whole. A soft smile played on her lips. She felt strong. She felt at peace. As the days turned into weeks, Margaret's new morning ritual became something she looked forward to, rather than a task to complete. The 5 simple steps, water, massage, posture, breath, and movement, had become woven into the fabric of her life like a favorite sweater that brought both warmth and familiarity. There was no dramatic transformation, no sudden miracle. Instead, there was quiet consistency, and with it, profound change. Her digestion, once a source of constant frustration, had settled into a natural rhythm. She no longer stared at the clock, waiting for her body to cooperate. Instead, it responded with the steady grace of something no longer being forced, but gently supported. The bloating that had made her hesitant to leave home in the mornings was gone. The unease, the reliance on pills and tea, the quiet worry, these had all slowly faded. What surprised Margaret most, however, wasn't the physical improvement, though that was real and measurable. It was the emotional shift. This daily practice reconnected her with her own body in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She began to feel proud, not for doing something difficult, but for choosing, every morning, to treat herself with kindness. The discipline wasn't harsh. It was loving. She shared the method with her book club, gently introducing it not as advice, but as a story. "I just started doing a few small things in the morning," she told them, "and it helped more than anything I'd tried before." Her friends listened, intrigued. A few began trying it too, and soon they traded stories, laughing about the awkwardness of bathroom stools and celebrating the tiny victories of regular mornings. Margaret's niece, when she visited, noticed the change immediately. "You seem lighter," she said, hugging her aunt. "I don't just mean physically." Margaret smiled. "I feel it too," she replied. "It's like I remembered how to take care of myself. This wasn't a diet. It wasn't a product. It was a return to rhythm, to trust, to a quieter kind of health that doesn't shout but hums in the background." For older adults, so often bombarded with prescriptions and procedures, this gentle routine was a breath of fresh air. 5 minutes each morning. That was all. 5 sacred minutes to listen, to move, to breathe, to say to your body, "I see you. I'm with you. We're in this together." And for Margaret, that small promise, kept day after day, made all the difference.